All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all feeling? How are you doing? Awesome. What a gorgeous, I love the aesthetic of this whole area. It's so great. How many of you were here with us for the first panel? Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, for giving up a beautiful Sunday. Hopefully after Viet Book Fest, we can all get outside and enjoy the sunshine. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Julie Va. I serve as a board member with the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association, also known as VALA. VALA is the proud presenter of Viet Book Fest. We are so excited to welcome you all here. Can I ask how many of you, this is the very first year that you've attended Viet Book Fest? Oh yes, amazing. Awesome, so your homework is to go home and tell other people about it so more people can come. So we're so excited to be here. If this is your first time attending a VALA event, so just a little bit about VALA, or the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association. We've been in the community for 20 plus years. Our motto is make art, create community. So as today, you being here is part of our effort to create space and hold space for our community, right? And have these really critical conversations. If you are enjoying the experience here, you're benefiting from the interactions, we ask you to please support the arts, support Vietnamese storytelling in our community. You'll see QR codes throughout the event space as well as in your program. So we ask you to please donate to support VALA and the work that we do in the community, and tell other people. So today, I'm so excited to introduce and welcome you all to the path to publication. Whether you're an aspiring writer or literary enthusiast, we're so excited to invite you into conversation with us this afternoon on the journey of amplifying Vietnamese voices in publishing. I'm so glad to have the honor of introducing our moderator for the Path of Publication panel, Anh Do. Anh has been a longtime supporter, advocate, and friend to VALA, and an essential voice to guide us through this conversation today. Anh Do is the Deputy Editor for Culture and Talent at the Los Angeles Times. In her role, she helps manage the internship, fellowship, recruitment, and training programs. Before this, she was the Community Engagement Editor and as the Metro Reporter covering Asian American issues and general assignments for 11 years. Anh has reported for the Seattle Times, the Orange County Register, and Le Viet Daily News, the largest Vietnamese publication in the United States. Born in Saigon, she is a graduate of USC with degrees in journalism and English. Her writing on culture and trauma has won awards from Columbia University and AAJA, and she received Yale's Poynter Fellowship in Journalism. In 2016, she was part of the Times team that won a Pulitzer Prize for breaking news coverage of the San Bernardino terrorist attacks, and in 2024, part of the team named a Pulitzer finalist for breaking news coverage of the Monterey Park shooting. Her passion is dog rescue, having volunteered on missions around the globe. So please join me in warmly welcoming our moderator for today's panel, Anh Do.
Thank you so much, Julie. We really appreciate your time. I hope you've had a delicious lunch, and I hope that you will pick up lots of tasty tidbits from this buffet of information from our diverse writers. On purpose, I worked with Isa, the founder of VALA, who you met earlier this morning, to bring you an audience that has written different kinds of work, because each of you has individual ideas for your own writing, and I hope there's a lot of aspiring authors in the audience, as well as people who have started to publish. We have someone who wrote a memoir, who wrote a cookbook, and a novel. So in case you've only thought about writing fiction, why not mix in nonfiction? It's a big recipe world out there, and there's a lot of choices to choose from. Carolyn needs no introduction because she was with us last year and had a sold out audience, as well as all of her books going, like leaping off the shelves early on. And she'll be able to tell you about her newest project. But she is going to talk about The Family Recipe, which is her second novel. And we have Vinh, who came all the way from Toronto. Carolyn's closer to us in Los Angeles. You haven't made it back yet. I just really like the name of his book because there's a sense of mystery to it. The Migrant Rain Falls in Reverse. You might be asking yourself, what the heck does that mean? That's what book sales are for. So, I think there's more than 5 books out there left, right? Yes. Yes, support authors. Tu David Phu is very bold, no holds barred. You can ask him any question, and he's eager to answer and kind of assuage all of your curiosity. And this is his book. Isn't that a great cover? Bold colors to match his personality. One of the things about Tu that I really like is how generous he is with his time and his cooking. He supports a lot of charitable causes and cooks in front of a camera very easily. Now are you getting more curious, a little bit hungrier about how they got published? Yeah. Who should we start with? Should it be ladies first, or do we not have to follow any kind of tradition? Should we go ABC order, or should we reverse it? Vinh? Yeah, because you came the farthest? Okay. This only happens once, because your name starts with a V, so you're at the end of the alphabet, usually. When I first called Vinh about this panel, he was telling me my goal is to demystify the publishing process. So he started writing one essay. And then what happened next, Vinh?
Yes, so the book started off as an essay called The Migrant Rain. And I wrote the essay with no audience in mind. I didn't think it was going to get published at all. It was really just something for me that I wanted to put down on the page. And then I sent it out to a magazine, and they took it and published it. And that allowed me to just feel like I could maybe do more of this and have sort of more essays. And so I started to write more essays and to kind of really send them out to places that I, to publications, to literary journals that I enjoyed reading. And that was that. And there was no plan for a book.
And the Migrant Rain became chapter 2 of your book.
Yes, yeah, it's the chapter 2, and so there was no plan for a book at all. It was definitely not something that I wanted to do, but the writing caught the attention of an agent who got in touch and was like, "Hey, are you interested in artistic representation?" And I said, "What is that?" And she's like, "You're probably, speaking to a lot of other people." I was like, "No, you're the only one who's ever reached out, And so we chatted, and she said, "This is a book." And so then it really, that was the process to kind of get me to think about, okay, so everything that I'm writing, all of this can come together into a coherent narrative.
That sounds kind of like a fairy tale, right? Who starts writing 1 or just 2 essays, gets it published in literary magazines, and then an agent appears out of the blue and calling you up and say, "Hey, can I work with you? Can I actually try to sell what you're writing?" That is very rare.
Yeah. So yeah, I obviously said yes to that offer, and and we kind of we worked together. We put together a proposal and sent it out to publishers. And when the process was, they told me, "Look, we send out a proposal to very, very widely to a bunch of different publishers, and you could hear back within a day, or you can hear back within a year." And so they
And
said...
how long did it take?
It was 2 weeks. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
magical.
So I was, I was like, okay, 6 months, I put it in my calendar. I was like, follow up with agent if you don't hear anything, at the 6 month stage. And and I heard back within 2 weeks. And, one thing that really helps with too is that the agent then was able to reach out to others to say, look, we have one person's interested, right? Or at least one publishing house is interested. Are you interested? Because if not, we're going to move on. And so that kind of like pushed others to consider the proposal, or else it would have just kind of sat there.
And
right?
that was in the summer of 2023?
Yeah.
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 So
yeah.
usually you have to search months, if not years, for an agent. You send your queries, your manuscript sample, a sample chapter, a letter, and you never hear back. It's like applying for a job. It just takes enormous patience. Like, this is something that only happens in the movies.
Yes. And so once we signed, it was wonderful, and I knew that I wanted this book to come out in April 2025 for the 50th anniversary. I felt like, thank you, yeah. I felt like it was just such an important context for the story itself, and for the book to kind of really have something to anchor it, as opposed to here's just another biography, a memoir, right? Here's another story from someone, but it's sort of deeply rooted and deeply steeped in this larger history. And so I knew that I wanted publication in this month. And so I basically had a year to write it, and I worked to deadline.
So that's the beginning of Vin's backstory, because we want to give you an understanding of what happens behind the scenes, right? For some people, it's a really fast ride. For some people, it's an endless journey of rejections and then therapy and
I'm waiting that for the next book.
the next one.
Like like this magical fairy tale movie like experience is, I don't think, going to happen again, and so I'm looking forward to experiencing some of that.
So maybe you can come back and tell us what happens next year.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from Tu, because you also had quite an unusual experience in getting your book offer.
Yeah, I had a very fairy tale-like experience as well too. I was out in the industry doing a bunch of stuff in the food space. I just got finished with a partnership with PBS. I did a film, it's called Bloodlines, about my mom. We did a partnership with PBS. It was aired nationally. You can watch it on YouTube. Yeah, it's okay, take your time, write it down. Just YouTube, search YouTube, Bloodline, and Chef 2 should come up. But it's a short 26-minute film about my mom. I just got done with that film. It was airing nationally, and I was just pivoting into other projects. I didn't have an interest to do a cookbook because I think at that time, and still currently so, I felt it was transactional. I felt that publishers, a lot like Hollywood, a lot like entertainment, they have these niche spaces that they want you to fill, and they're like, hey, give us a cookbook, because these things sell. I had no interest in that. I think Parjiando, like, I'm very bold. Like, I don't, if I'm not going to be able to say what I want to say, I don't want to do it. But I was very lucky being approached by a good colleague, mentor, friend of mine, a man named Bryant Terry. He's a very prolific, very thoughtful chef in the industry that provided narratives for people of color. They credit him as one of the first thought leaders in the food space that allowed black communities or black identities to eat vegetables, right? He broke that narrative. He was like one of the first chefs to kind of highlight that and to get support in that sort of space. But he came to me with this imprint called Four Color, which was backed by Penguin House and Random House, And I didn't have an agent at the time. He offered me a cookbook deal without me having an agent. And I thought there were certain restrictions and parameters of what he would allow me to do. He said, you could write whatever cookbook you want. We believe in you. And in that very moment, I had to scramble to get a cookbook agent. So it's kind of sort of the opposite of what Vinh went through.
But you write whatever cookbook you want. There are no restrictions.
I've never had that. I've never heard of that before. I think I was like the only.
What do we do in life that has no restrictions?
Yeah, right. And to have that sort of. Exactly right. To have that sort of confidence, and I'm not a Gordon Ramsay. I'm not an A-list celebrity. Not even close. I'm like R-list, right? There's definitely a lot of other more powerful, beautiful, more prominent Vietnamese chefs out there, Vietnamese authors out there. But for them to have that sort of confidence, and I just want to, from what I've learned in my career path and this specific incident, is that it's not about swaying the masses for opportunities, but swaying the right individual. And I think that's exactly what happened with myself and Brian Terry, right? There's people with way more followers.
Agent?
What's that?
How did you find the agent?
Just referrals through friends. Other Vietnamese cookbook authors that I had refer me to. I just had like 5 interviews with different agents, and by the 5th one, I found Nicole Turliot, which is good for, not just an agent, but a friend of mine. I call her my version of the Jerry Maguire, right? Because she goes to town for me. We go to town for each other.
Tu found this same agent that worked with Nguyen Trân, right?
Yes, Nguyen Trân.
From the Starry Kitchen. Are you
Yes.
guys familiar with that restaurant?
Yes.
He wrote a phenomenally unusual cookbook to mirror all of his pop-up cooking activities. But, you also had kind of a Hollywood type of story in your path to publication. Like someone approach you without any effort to say, hey, I want to represent you. Give you this deal, and then you got a major publishing house.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a blessing, right? And it's more, for me, it's less about strategy. It's about marketing, not just marketing, but whatever writing or speaking opportunities you have, or anywhere we could strike the chords of people's hearts. I'd say if you stay genuine and true and niche to yourself, I think eventually with time and patience, you strike the right person, and that's where opportunities come. I don't think opportunities are planned. I think opportunities come sort of serendipitously when you put yourself in that space. And I think just echoing you, that's what patience is about.
I think part of what he got is his visibility. He has volunteered so much in the community. He shows up at all the events. Even though you're mainly based in Northern California, he goes up and down the state, and basically where anyone invites you, you're out there and you're very candid and you're very open, so people are drawn to that. In Southern California, we have quite a popular name, Carolyn. With your second book, you had is it a different agent?
Yeah, my journey was not like these two. I'm a journalist. I'm a former journalist. My undergrad degree is in journalism. I started off working at this small Asian newspaper in Seattle, along with some other neighborhood reporting blogs for a while. And journalism is a really hard life, as you know. So, but I always gravitated towards fiction.
But journalism can lead you to better things.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I hope. I don't know.
You are. Carolyn had a different agent, but the same editor, same publishing house, and the same team. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, my journey was pretty rough. I wrote, my first 2 books did not land me an agent. I actually wrote YA contemporary novels. And in 2017, I was in my MFA program, and I was going to write literary fiction. But I had spent 5 years working on my first book, which is The Fortunes of Jaded Women. It was at the time, it was a short story collection. And I remember the first week I started my MFA program, and I got an offer from an agent. And I remember thinking, goodbye, everybody. And I dropped out. I dropped out that week, and I don't recommend doing that. Just finish your degree. But yeah, so 2017, I dropped out of my MFA, and I worked. When we went on submission with my novel of short stories, it didn't sell because in order for short stories to sell, you need an MFA. It's just part of that prestige, I guess, and I didn't have that, so I spent a couple of months revising it into a fiction commercial novel, and from there, I knew something was different this time because when we went back out, we got the first offer, and my editor at Simon & Schuster is Vietnamese. She's a Vietnamese woman. At the time, she wasn't senior. She was an associate editor, and I remember talking to my agent at the time, who is a Korean-American woman, and we were kind of like talking through the offer, and, you know, she felt like, you know, we could have gone to a more senior editor at a different house, but in my heart, you know, like, I always root for the underdog because I am the underdog. So any associate editor, junior agent, and, you know, my agent at the time, Stephanie, she's not my agent anymore. She actually left the industry, but I was her first client that she ever signed as an agent, and she looked at me and she's like, "Do you trust me?" I was like, "I trust you." And so my whole team were women, Asian American women, and they were all juniors now. And now my editor, Lone Lei, she's a senior editor at Simon Schuster. So you grow with the people who uplift you.
Are there a lot of Vietnamese American agents out there?
Agents or editors?
Agents.
I can think of two literary agents, and maybe 2 editors at the senior level that they can acquire, but they both started off as juniors.
So share with our listeners what it's like to handle the contract part.
Yeah, not good at math. I'm not good at legalese. So that's what your agent is there for, who helps you navigate through that process. And yeah, I didn't have anybody to double check contracts. The traditional publishing was like so new to me. I just kind of had to trust my agent and my team.
So did any of you get a lawyer to help you look over the terms?
Nope. Yeah. I trusted the agency and the agent to do that work. And I think part of the great thing about having an agent is that, you know, you build that relationship with them and you can offload some of that work onto them, right? So that your job is to work and write and produce what you need to produce and not really have to worry about contracts and, you know, publicity or getting into the right rooms or any of those kinds of things, right? Which is not something that I want to be doing or am good at. And I think having that agent was good. So I didn't have a lawyer. I just signed it away. Yeah.
I didn't have a lawyer, and just echoing both of these guys, having an astute agent is very important because it's not just about the legal language, it's about the trust in the agent and them understanding the space. However, whenever you're in business, entertainments, things that require IP, anything that requires an agent, anything that requires a contract, I highly recommend, because I've been burned, not in the literary space, but outside of the literary space in regards to IP, intellectual property, for not fully understanding that language. And even though lawyers cost, $700 an hour, it's worth 3 hours, 2 hours of their time for them to just peruse it. So that way that you're protected. Last thing, I'm Vietnamese and my family tree extends pretty deep because it's both non-blood related and blood related family members, and I reached out to those who were in like the legal space for a favor. So I would recommend you do the same thing. If it's not in your family, in your community spaces, where they offer those, even your churches, where there might be an opportunity for them to extend those services for you in a community support way for them to look at your contract. That's what I would recommend, right?
I think that's really helpful because you guys are very trusting. Look at their innocent faces. Even though they have tattoos, it doesn't imply anything.
I kind of like close my eyes and sign each
Wow.
time. Yeah. I just can't look at it.
If I could also say, just add on to that, like, I think in this day and age, I think publishing houses or even companies, I think it's very seldom seen that people would give you a shady deal, because I think they'll get crucified via social media. So I don't think, not to say that it doesn't exist, but I feel that sometimes use your instincts. Do some digging. Has this company have any history of burning other authors? Just, I think that alone, and the people who's running the house or the contacts you have there, just have a very open conversation with them. So.
And you can also contact authors who have been published by that house, and you know who they are because they literally market their authors on their website, and you can talk to them about their personal experiences. One thing that I want you to share with our listeners is during the exhausting, stressful, like writing process, months, maybe sometimes years, what is the team at the publishing house doing for you while you're having to work toward a deadline? What are they planning in the back of their mind? Like, one thing that might be good is how you came up with the title of your book. Because just like in the first panel, we heard about how people choose their names, their identity, whether it's authentic or not. The title is one of the things that sells a book. Just like the labels that you buy when you go shopping for clothes or cars, shoes or purses, the title really is your face to the world. And so I hear from authors a lot that there's fighting or debate or back and forth. I like this, I don't like this. So tell us that backstory.
I can start because the title for me, I again had a really smooth process with the editing. What was really great is to speak to an editor before you sign. I think that was really important for me, to see whether they see your vision, whether they know what it is that you're doing, and can really support the work that you're doing, because I know of stories of editors who want a totally different book to be written, right? You sign with them, they're at this big house, you get a lot of money, and then they literally force you to write something that's not yours. And that's very painful. So I had a really great editor who saw my vision and really allowed me to do what I was doing while critiquing me and making me do all that work. But the title was the biggest fight that I had. So I sold the book with this title, The Migrant Rain Falls in Reverse. And within a month, and this is I have two different presses, one in Canada and one in the US. And the Canadian press came back and said, we hate this title. It's not going to sell. No one understands what it means, and it's just not going to work. So
They were very insistent.
Very insistent. Like, they said, we cannot go with this title. And so we went through this process. I finished the book, and then we workshopped titles, and they were awful.
There's no imagination in
Yeah,
the workshopping part. When you were telling me they
got it.
wanted him to use the keywords like lost,
freedom,
or
escape,
journey.
Yeah. So at
Everyone
one point,
calls it that.
At one point in time, this book was going to be called "Losing My Father, Gaining Freedom." Yeah. And I said, I will give you all the money back and burn this manuscript if this is what this, because I think a lot of times these publicity people, these publishers think, that's an easy title, that's what a refugee story is supposed to do, that's what it's supposed to be like.
But you don't want a title that's interchangeable. So losing my father, you could say losing my mother, losing my sister, losing my baby, that sort of thing, and then gaining my freedom.
Yeah. But it just, again, it reduces our story to one thing, right? That they can only see one thing, which is loss and escape
cliche.
and freedom. It's so cliche. And I was like, my book does exactly the opposite of that, I think, you know? I play around with those conventions. I play around with those expectations. The book is a speculative memoir, right? It blends both memoir and fiction, and I didn't want to write a book that was already there. There are books that are losing my father, gaining freedom. That book exists. You know, it actually,
really
it's there.
lucky,
it exists.
right?
It's there. It's already there. And if you wanted that, like, go and get that. And I didn't want that. And so we fought. And I did say, I will rip up this contract, you know.
But you were so lucky because you had two publishers.
I had two publishers, so the Americans came to my rescue. So thank you, America. I gained freedom from it, you know. Yeah. Anyways, no, the American publisher was like, we love this title. It's great. Like, people are gonna buy this book because of the title. Like, it's strange. You'll pause and you'll ask yourself what's going on, and even in that 2 seconds, that it's already capturing some kind of attention. And so they're like, Vinh, if you're okay with having 2 different titles, we're gonna go with this. And so I'm like, oh, what? Like, how am I gonna have 2 different titles? Like, it's gonna be so weird to be like this book and this book, but it's the same book. But I trusted them, and I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go with it. And then the next day, the Canadians came back and said, oh, fine, we'll go with the title.
And you know why they gave in? One of the top reasons why they gave in? It's because when you launch a book, you want to get press.
Press,
you want
publicity.
the world to know that you have given birth to this baby.
Yeah.
And now you're ready to introduce it to them.
Yeah.
And if it gets covered, say in a major newspaper, then you want the same name, the author, to be replicated in Canada as in the US.
Yeah.
So you can't be working with dueling competing titles.
Exactly.
Because then you lose the hits.
But there are different titles. Like, there are books that exist with like a different title in the UK than the US. So
that
it is
usually
there.
happens, I think, especially with foreign language when they translate it.
Yeah.
But you know, both countries, the main language
Right.
is English.
Yeah.
So
And you know, like, the US has book coverage, like, for all its faults. You guys still do love books. Like, in Canada, we have 3 venues for book reviews. And that's literally it. Like, book reviews are just not a thing anymore.
that's why he's here in California. Tu, how about you?
Yeah, like I said, I was very blessed to have the imprint with their support. Penguin Random House, they try to gear me towards a place where they were giving me feedback about the design of the book, what should be on the cover, and what the title should be. But naturally, I didn't listen. And the title's called The Memory of Taste. And that title, that idea has always, I started off with that when I quit my chef job, my cushy corporate chef job, part of a restaurant group. I'm not going to name them. I had PTO, like, everything was great. The restaurant's doing well. It was Michelin at the time as well, too. But this fire was set underneath me to learn more about Vietnamese food. You guys seen me here, right? But for those of you who haven't met me in person yet, I'm pretty sure you thought I was short. I'm 6'2", I'm tattoos, I'm a big guy. So I walk the world without people seeing or judging me as a Vietnamese person. So I wanted to dive deeper in that because I wasn't represented in that sort of way. And from the very beginning, I had this idea and thought of like, what is identity? And for me, I related through food. And the way my mom perceived it was she explored her identity through food, through memory, hence the memory of taste. So it doesn't matter. So that started my journey. So it doesn't matter who was giving me the offer. That was going to be the title of the book.
But still, you felt very vulnerable when you started getting this offer and you would have to reveal yourself to the public, this
100%.
other side,
100%.
using the recipes from his mom and your aunties.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, but I like when you told me that you wanted to show your real self, like in your book,
100%.
Ramon is exactly that. You don't try to hide it between some other kind of name. When you talk to Tu, he will say like Gỏi Cuốn. It's Gỏi Cuốn. It's not summer roll.
That's right.
You don't. I mean, what is summer roll? It sounds like a dance.
It sounds
to
like a
me.
dance, right?
Yeah.
You roll in the summertime. Yeah.
Tu did something very unusual, which is he teamed up with his co-writer, who is a journalist and one of the most prolific food critics in the country, and someone super talented. And her name is?
Saleho, my co-author, my really good friend. Yes, you can clap for Saleho. Her work is wonderful. Their work is wonderful. And the reason why I did that is because I understood the weight of telling the truth, right? And I needed a journalist to do that. And I feel like we all have, of what we've seen or what we experience as Vietnamese Americans or Asian Americans or people of color, is that we don't tell the whole truth. We polish it up, right? Because it's not accepted, it's not favorable for us to tell people about our suffering, right? They want the polished, clean version, right? I was telling Giando, like, you know, they wanted to know that my mom was nice, but they didn't want to hear the story that she sewed. She was a seamstress who worked under the table and they paid her by the pound, right? So this is me leaning into, once again, memory of taste, but honoring all the things that happened before, right? Understanding what happened with water spinach, understanding why my mom used Costco Kirkland brand croissants to make banana bread pudding, right? It's being honest. So, it's my conviction with every person on my team, I had to have them, especially Saleho.
Yeah, she writes for the San Francisco Chronicle, and her words when describing food and eating, the poetry of that experience, I think you will find them very soaring. Carolyn has a nice story about how her second novel was supposedly should have had a different title.
Actually, every book I've sold, the title has changed. I don't have the same experience as you guys. I think there's more, maybe like more pushback with me for some reason. The first book, my debut was actually called "Losing My Father." No, I'm just kidding. No. Losing My Mother. My first book was actually supposed to be called, I sold it as The Killjoy Luck Club. Yeah, but the wrath of Amy Tan, you know what I mean? Like the legalese behind it. My second book is actually supposed to be called The Breadwinner. And yeah, I got a lot of pushback on that too. My forthcoming book, the title has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if it's like my team in general or...
Do you guys like this title? The Family Recipe?
I don't really like it. Yeah, I like my first...
Prefer The Breadwinner?
I do. It's a double entendre. And so most of my titles tend to be double entendres, but this is pretty straightforward and I think maybe more marketable.
It's a more relatable title that got chosen. When people think of The Breadwinner, there's some sort of tension that's underlying.
Yeah, but I like that. I like it's a double entendre. But once you read it, you'll know the purpose of the double meaning of that word. But it's lost. It's lost. Now it's just a family recipe. And my third book that's coming out, the title has changed too. Yeah, I seem to have a lot of maybe more voices in the room when it comes to marketing and sales than I'm used to.
And speaking of marketing and sales, so part of it is you have an agent, then you have a publishing house because your book proposal is up for bid. Unlike Tu, who has no restrictions, write anything you want, usually your agent puts your proposal out there and there could be a bidding war, like for a hot house in a hot neighborhood, or there could be something that's more subtle. It's an individual experience. But Carolyn has had a pretty smooth ride in that. And then in working with your agent, you'll have an editor who edits the material that you finally turn in and polishes and organizes the writing, and then you go to revision. You also have publicity and marketing team. The big houses have a lot of people set up to book your lecture tours, your appearances, everything. In fact, I got an email at my LA Times email address, say, would you like to interview Carolyn? And I finally, yeah, I responded to her. I said, I am seeing Carolyn this weekend. You know, yeah, so she's doing her job for you. Tell us a little bit about the marketing and publicity experiences for people who want to know how to go around the country or go around the region to sell the book once it's published. Yeah, Carolyn, you can start.
I think this is the one time where I am actually lucky in this regard. I think my debut, I got Good Morning America for the book club pick, and you know most debut books, it's pretty rare to get a book club fiction like Reese, Jenna, GMA, I think Oprah. So I think that kind of shifted the tone with my team, and I think before I was like considered like mid-list, and then I became a lead title after that.
Carolyn, tell a little more about what is a book club pick and how do you get yourself in the running?
I really don't know how to get myself in the running. Again, I think that is part of the luck part, where it's like the right team reading at the right time and how they're feeling. And you know, these book clubs, they get sent so many book titles, so many.
The three most knowledgeable or most popular famous book club picks are from Oprah, which is the oldest, and then Reese Witherspoon, the actress. She has her own and she announces it on Instagram. And you know, she controls quite a lot of Hollywood productions, and she just sold her production company during COVID for $50 million. So she has a lot of say in book sales, and it's just anecdotal. And then Good Morning America has one through Jenna, right?
Jenna is NBC.
Oh,
or Today Show, sorry.
The Today Show, thank you.
I don't
But
watch
those
it.
two, they have their own book picks, and then they invite the authors on morning television, a time when it's really popular. So,
Yeah, again, I think it was just lucky. I was just it was pure luck. I think I remember my agent and my editor called me at the same time, and they're like, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "I'm always sitting down. What is it? I'm always horizontal." And they were like, "You just got Good Morning America for September." And I beat out like Celeste Ng, Stephen King. You know, it was just crazy, and you don't think about that. And I've worked 10 years for that moment, and I just assumed my debut book would go quietly into the night. and like maybe one or two people would pick it up. But after that, I think the team started to pay more attention to me, and it's kind of sad that you need that validation from external, like perhaps like white forces, to be able to elevate you to the next ladder, next ladder, next ladder.
So while you're sitting at your screen having major headaches because the deadline is looming, and you're so nervous, you're overeating, you're not sleeping, things like that, your team at your publishing house has to be working on all these other elements because they can't wait until the last minute, because all media and even book clubs, they have schedules that they roll out things. They're not going to choose the book picks at the last minute either, because everything has like a slot when it's going to air and when it's going to publish itself. So if you get one of the big publishing houses, you have all these players that are kind of collaborating to try to promote you. But even if you have a smaller house, you can join in that effort, and you look at what other authors have done, and then you use the lessons, you go onto social media, right? What is your best tip, though, for promotions?
I think my best tip for promotion is just imagine who you're writing the book for and lean into those spaces. I think for me, book sales are always nice. Being number one, if you ever attain it, I haven't attained it yet. Meeting your quota is always nice, but I think for me, the thing that I care about the most was who I was writing this book for, and then my intention was to have Vietnamese American or just Vietnamese diaspora really appreciate the nuances of it. And because that's the case, that's how it dictated how I promoted it on social media, the stories I told in the book, the community spaces that I went to just personally ask, did you want to do a cookbook event with me? Do you want to do I just did a cookbook giveaway with the Westminster Library, because once again, my intention was to have the book accessible to like underprivileged, marginalized community members, right? In Westminster. I just did one in Oakland, Chinatown with one of the community organizations I'm a board member of. And that's the thing. I think beyond the sales, I think for me, I think of promotion as a different thing. I think of promotion and marketing as a way for me to talk to people who are just finding out about me. And because I have that perspective, those are the people that I'm leaning into. And I try to find all the ways to communicate with them, whether it's a social media post, a newsletter, or reaching out to those community spaces and be like, hey, can we invite people in and do a cookbook talk, whether it's big or small? Right? Yeah.
She's a future author right there. That's why she's already in the audience.
Can I just jump in and say that was beautifully said, and I think I kind of feel the same way. I think it's about, for me, I am with a small press and a small house in the U.S., and the first thing when we started having these conversations was I said, please email Vala. I said, please, I want to be here, right? I've known about this, the Viet Book Club. And the book isn't actually out yet. It's out April 15th. And I was like, and they were able to like send advance copies. So you guys are getting the first copies of the book here, And I think for me, it's about like, I want the book to find the people that it needs to find. And because nothing is guaranteed. Like even if you're with a big press, I know of friends who are with the big press, and a lot of times these big presses, every season they pick 2 books to put all the eggs in, right? They're like, we're going to really go after these books.
Where you have like 50 students, you never get attention from the professor, or going to a smaller college and you only have 12 students.
And it's not necessarily the best thing for you, right? And I think it can become very toxic to think, oh, why am I not getting attention? What is it that, all of these things. And so I think this is my 4th book actually. I have 3 other academic books, but like 5 people read that. and that's totally fine. But yeah, I think it's about like learning to manage expectations and like really asking myself like, what does it mean for this book to be successful, you know? And like it's like this, like just being here, right? Whether no one buys it or not or whatever, or if it doesn't get into a book club or win anything, which it probably won't, right? Because if you really think about it, the amount of amazing books, the amount of amazing authors that are there is just no space for that. And so I think it's like having to define for yourself what that success for that book means. Yeah.
One of the things I think that potential authors find it hard to manage is the discipline to write, to meet deadlines. I have deadlines every day, so I'm like insane. But how do you guys do it? Like, what is your one thing that you do to push yourself to meet that goal so the editors are not screaming at you and asking, like, where is that manuscript or where are the missing chapters?
So I'm an academic by training, so I'm really good with deadlines. Like really, really good with deadlines. I love having deadlines. I think knowing that, okay, we signed this contract, here are the dates that we've set out, it gives me horizons, right? So
I've never heard of anyone who says I love having
I
deadlines.
love-
Like you're like an extinct breed.
I love deadlines. Okay, but this is one of this is a writing hack that I have, is that oftentimes I will wake up, and even before I get out of bed, I open my laptop and I just start working, and I start writing right away. And it's my way of tricking myself into saying, I haven't even brushed my teeth yet, and so whatever comes out doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because I think sometimes we hype ourselves up, you know, like, okay, like I have to have my coffee, I have to be showered, I have to sit at my desk, all my books are here, and there's so much pressure to then now write something really good. And really, so I think it's like finding those tricks to trick yourself into saying, whatever comes out just comes out, and it doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be usable. It doesn't have to be perfect. And for me, it's literally like the moment I wake up, I start writing. So my partner will like look over sometimes and go, "What are you doing?" You know, like I'm actually still in bed, like I'm laying down, like I'm horizontal, and I have the laptop on my chest.
I'm sure we're
and
all
I'm
gonna
writing.
go home and try that. Yeah.
But stuff gets worked out there, and things happen. So that's a hack that I have.
That's cool. Do you all have questions for our authors? Does anyone have a Taylor? Do you? But being first is good.
This question is for Carolyn. I heard that your first book, The Fortunes of Jaded Women, has been picked up to be serialized on TV, and so excited to hear about that. Excited that there are opportunities for Vietnamese actors and talent and people in the industry to work on your show. Well, what can you tell us about that?
I mean, I feel like she's had like 7 lives. It got an option for a film, and I remember I went through like a whole. That's when you do need a lawyer. That is when I actually did need a lawyer, and I remember being very baffled. I think it just happened very suddenly, and yeah, they at the time they were like, "Do you want to adapt it?" And I said, "I'm not a screenwriter. I wouldn't know what to do." And then I remember my manager's time was like, "Why do you automatically say no when you should be saying yes?" So I said yes. So I spent. It's interesting because the day I got the writing contract to adapt it, the WGA went on strike. So it's just been like a series of waiting and figuring it out. But you know, I thought for sure it would die during the strike, But the minute the strikes were over, the team, they emailed me, they were saying like, okay, let's go, pick up the pen. So I spent the next like 7 months adapting the book into a pilot with my showrunner and the producers on it. And so now we have the script for the pilot. But you know, things move so slow that in that time I've already written 2 books. That, you know, I think The Sympathizer took 7 years to get made, right? 7 years? So I really don't know the longevity, but she's not dead, which is crazy. It's so crazy because she's just still alive. Yeah, she's a little survivor. So I don't know. I just know that we have the script. Yeah.
More questions?
This is a question for all 3. I was wondering if you guys have any more advice or tips that are very niche, because it was really interesting hearing about your tip about writing right when you wake up in the morning. I think I'm going to try that out. So for all 3 of you, like if you have any more advice or tips, that would be really great to hear.
One of my favorite creators and writers is an actress, is Michaela Cole. She wrote the TV show I May Destroy You. But she has a tiny booklet of creative advice. But one of her things that she always says is disappear. Just disappear. Don't talk to anybody. Don't like post on social media, just disappear. And what she means by that is when you have this itch to complete something, you must disappear. And I disappeared for like a couple years. I'm still gone. Yeah, I'm not on a deadline for 4 years, but like just like disappear. And I think that's okay. And I think the people who love you and support you will still be waiting for you when you come back.
Could I just add, everything that you do, whether it's writing a book or opening another business, be intentional about your work, right? You look at the span of the capacity that you have in your week, and if you're not willing to commit a full day of pouring energy into that project, even like the writing process, like Soleil and I were so intentional about getting the book done and having it meet the deadline because we were intentional about it. We're like, okay, we're gonna do this every week for 4 hours. Even if we just sat there and made jokes, right? And you know, had fun with each other, just picking out ideas, that's part of the creative process. Be intentional about your time, right? If you really wanna write a book, commit 3 days, 2 days, 1 hour, 4 hours a week to it, put it on your calendar, and then that allows you, when you get to that time in that space, you're saying, I'm committing my time to this, right? The whole 10,000 hours outlier thing. You gotta hit your 10,000 hour mark before you could even create something. So start weekly.
And you can reward yourself with lots of food, whatever you like to eat after every 1,000 hours.
I think it's disappear and discipline, as what the both of you are saying. And you know, I think for me though, I didn't have that luxury because I still have a day job, you know. And so I you know, and I was organizing, and you know, there was just so many things that I had to kind of pull myself in these different directions. But another hack that I have, and I'm realizing now that I'm such an unhealthy writer, I'm such an unhealthy worker, is that I never work on one thing at a time. I constantly have about 4 different tabs open. And so if I'm stuck on something, I'll jump over and I'll move on to another thing. And in some ways that keeps the writing flowing. And I know it sounds scattered, but it actually helps me to focus better. Like, and because I'm only focusing for like 5 minutes. You know, 5 minutes to write this one sentence, and then if it doesn't work anymore, I move on to another 5 minutes of focus on another project, on something else, and it sounds really unhealthy, but it works for me. So yeah.
I also just want to say, like, up until 2 years ago, I also had a full-time job, and by the way, this doesn't pay either. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't pay. But I was able to go full time 2 years ago. But I would write during my day job. Like I would just open up the computer screen and people would walk by and they would see, oh, chapter 27. And I was like, I didn't care. I just knew I had to I just knew. So yeah, don't be afraid to get fired.
So feel free to double dip. Yeah. Okay. There was another question over here.
Hi, I'm an aspiring poetry author right now, and my question for all three of you is, I guess my question is for someone who is an aspiring author and they have a manuscript done and their poems done. I guess my issue right now is understanding if I should go into looking for a publisher, an agent now that I'm understanding, or self-publishing on Amazon KDP. I think that's kind of the direction where I'm feeling a little bit lost on, like, I just need this book out. Yeah, like this book has a lot of intention poured into it, and now I'm at the, where do I go?
I would say start sending those poems out anywhere and widely. Just getting, one of the things that Du was saying that was also really resonating was this idea, the intentionality and doing the thing that you love. And because you never know who's reading, right? I think that was the thing with me. I did not publish with this plan of like an agent would read it and then they would do this, like that's not how it works. Like you don't know who your audience is, you don't know who's reading, you don't know who's paying attention. Even if it's in the most obscure online journal that 5 people read, one of those 5 people might really just love whatever it is that you're offering, and that can become something, right? So find those places that will know what it is that you're doing and see what it is that you're doing and will accept the work that you have to offer, and really just hope and pray that someone's looking. So
you're saying trying to publish individually, one poem here and
yeah,
there.
individually.
And have you attended any writers' conferences? Good for you. Yeah. Right. That's great. I think you can look up AWP. They have a huge writers conference. There was one just last week at the LA Convention Center. It's an annual thing, and they had 100,000 people with 300 panels on publishing.
Look up your favorite poets and their books and see their publishing houses. Like Ocean Vuong was famously pubbed at Copper Canyon Press, which is a small print up in Oregon. And they take submissions year-round, and you don't need an agent. So you have to just look at those specific print houses of people that you really admire. My friend, the poet Vinh Nguyen, she also didn't have an agent when she pubbed her first 2 books. And she went on tour in Vietnam and all across the country on it. So just find those houses, and most poetry prints do not require a literary agent, but they will help you to the next step with your publishing goals and dreams.
Could I just add, if we could clap it up for her for one more time, starting her journey. If I could just offer, don't be so fixated on what success looks like for you, on what the success for the book. If you love what you do, keep doing what you do. And I think everything will come to fruition. And super kind of funny tip, understand the power of a DM. Slide into people's DMs.
No, don't do that.
Right. Slide into people's DMs. See, don't do that. because, well, for me, let me speak for myself. I mean, slide into people's DMs in a thoughtful way, not in a creepy hookup way, right? But like echoing these guys, like reaching out to people, because you never know who's going to respond. You never know who you're going to move. You never know who's going to extend an opportunity to you, for you to not, whether it's not a paid opportunity or a networking opportunity, but just giving you extremely valuable information that could change the trajectory of your career, right? So don't be fixated on what success looks like, because just keep doing what you do and do what you love, and be with the people who appreciate poetry. Respectfully, if you're doing poetry and you love it as much as you do, but you're hanging out with your friends that don't do poetry, that means you don't love poetry enough, right? Like, the reason why I love food so much is because everyone that I hang out with loves food, right? It's 24/7, 12 months a year for the past 20 years now. I know I look young, but.
I will say authors are kind of annoying. Like, we're kind of like an annoying bunch. But I do agree, like, go to all the events. There's open mic nights all the time in OCLA. There's writing clubs, there's writing Facebook groups, there's beta reading groups. Like, that's how I got started too. My friend was on Reddit pub, whatever you call it, that subreddit, and that's how she got her book. You just have to immerse yourself in it. And Google is your best friend.
Yes. Oh, and writing contests.
Advice of the DMs, because I do that all the time. That's how we find sources. If one person doesn't want to talk and reveal all their secrets, well, you just spend another 20 minutes on Instagram and you'll find someone instantly. I think next year we should have a workshop on that, Isa. We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask a question because you all audiences and what that.
Okay. I will say, my first book didn't, my debut book had a lot of pushback, because one of the critiques was it was maybe not palatable to white audiences, and one of the things that was a pushback were the names I chose. I used a name like Juan, or I don't even remember, like it was too hard for people to pronounce. And my editor, again, she's a Vietnamese woman, she sided with me, and she said, make the reader work. Don't make it easy on them, and that's as a united front. And again, I'm very lucky to have a Vietnamese woman on my team. That's very rare in general, but I hold that truth very dear to me now, where it's like, some readers turn to books to escape, right? And I respect that. I also have my escape books, and some books readers choose to have a hard journey. And I think it's a good thing to make readers work a little bit, and I think because, I think it's good. It's good to do that.
Could I just start off with, if you're a creative, no matter how big or how small, that you are a thought leader. And if you are a thought leader, you are a trendsetter. If you are a trendsetter, you create what people will want and what people demand. You have to believe that in yourself, right? And I've always believed that and had that conviction. A small example of that is that my publisher gave me a really hard time because the editing team and the team that was working on the book couldn't get the diacritic marks right. Shout out to Viet Nguyen sympathizer. I remember I cooked for him a long time ago. I did a menu. I didn't put the diacritic marks, and he was like, Tu, what's up with that? Why'd you leave out the diacritic marks? And ever since then, I had this conviction. In that moment, I had this understanding of that having the diacritic marks told people that this was Vietnamese, that it wasn't watered down, right? So once again, you set the trend, right? You are the creative, not them. You are the painter of the canvas. You're not painting it for them, you're painting it for yourself, right? That's the whole point of writing books or reading books, right? Is for people not to get what they want, but force them outside of themselves to see outside themselves. So why are you painting it for them? You're doing it for yourself. So
When I pre-interviewed Tu for this panel, he said something very eloquent after I asked him what was the biggest lesson in publishing your book. And he said, don't compromise your vision. Someone might disrupt their vision to be obedient. They'll disregard what they think since their advice on what to do if they want the book to do well. But be an artist. Who gives a fuck? More than quantifying success, I want to be able to sleep at night. I hope you all have a very good sleep tonight after this illuminating these words from our authors, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.